Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Man, you see these quotes come out from Bam Adebayo. The Heat big man has had an interesting summer with some comments. I'm very interested. You know, we did just recently have Bam on the show, and very positive, and usually that's the way the guy is, you know. But this is a man who I do think is envisioning himself taking some steps in this league, a man who does feel like he's been overlooked and disrespected many times, many of our conversations, you know, especially discussing one thing, and that is his standing as the best defender in the damn league. And he does not feel like he's gotten his just due with that. This is the first year in a row where he is, this is the first year, rather, that he has made first team all defense, which is crazy. I remember talking about this about a couple seasons ago, when, you know, he was doing no campaigning for this defensive player of the year. He really wasn't. And it was very noticeable with the Miami Heat, who at the time, they were the 1 seed in the East, and the Boston Celtics under Ime Udoka were flatlining early on in the season, really not doing anything. They kind of stunk, actually. And then after January, they took off. And, you know, we're battling the Heat for the top of the East, as has been, you know, typically the case between the two teams, right? So this whole campaign gets going. Marcus Smart ends up winning the award. And I really do think that was complete horsebleep. Now, the real only knock against Bam that year was he missed the most games that he ever had in a season, especially it was in the first half of the year. He had a fluke injury where his hand got caught on a rim, tore a ligament, had to get surgery on it, comes back, you know, completely dominates, plays great, and the Heat finished with the best record in the East. Jimmy Butler was their only all-star that year. I remember Kyle Lowry making fun of him because he has to go to Cleveland. But that was the first time I think it was really noticed, like, my God, this guy has, like, no shot. And then the next year, it goes to Jaren Jackson Jr., who, you know, couldn't play near the minutes that Bam did, would get a ton of fouls, but he was a block machine. Puts up a ton of blocks, and the Heat, they don't really believe in chasing blocks. That was one of these things that you kind of drive notice with Hassan Whiteside and Spo, where they would butt heads. Would be like, hey, Spo, I had 8 blocks. It's not a great game. It'd be like, I mean, sometimes, but like you gotta, you know, sometimes be within the system, and you know, you have guys who are stat counting, and that's just where it ends up with that, you know. To Memphis's credit, better team that year, so you know, the Heat were kind of toiling back and forth, but I still think, you know, Bam, Jaren Jackson, I think Bam is the better defender in my opinion. Jaren Jackson, he's good. He doesn't always say he's good, but he's no Bam Adebayo. And then of course Rudy Gobert, we know they were going to give it to best defender, best team, best defense. They were going to give it to Rudy Gobert, who, of course, is now got 4 of those things at home, even though when it really matters, he doesn't seem to show up defensively. Anyway, I say all of this because Bam had some comments to Yahoo Sports' Vince Goodwill. And I do love this about about the Olympics, because I do love that the reporters can kind of ask these guys about their personal stuff, because they have this one goal. It's very obvious, the gold medal, but you can also kind of campaign for yourself and be in this spot of the summer where, you know, you're pointing some things out personally that you think are ridiculous. And, you know, Bam, I think for a while has thought this media voting is complete, it's complete and utter horseshit. That guys don't know what they're watching, and especially on the defensive end. And this guy can literally guard anybody on the court, and they act for other guys like, they kind of can. This guy literally can. And he's also doing this at a size where he probably shouldn't be banging with the Joel Embiids and doing it with the Nikola Jokic. I mean, go watch his game against Nikola Jokic. Jokic, guaranteed. And Jokic even had these comments after the game. Like, you know, he's like, there's a respect there. The way that Bam makes that guy work, that just other guys don't, and can do it without fouling, and just does it. He's so heinous, dude, on the defensive end. It's really a marvel to watch him play, and it is one of the pleasures about getting to cover the guy. But anyway, so here are the comments. Vince Goodwill writes, antennas were raised when he shrugged off about the possibility of going against the French duo in the Olympics, Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert. So he spoke about it after his media session with a small group of writers in Las Vegas. He says, quote, all I have to do is average 20, 10, and 5, he said to Yahoo Sports, muttering down the halls of a Las Vegas Bellagio hotel. Quote, the one thing that irks me, it's not my fault that I'm versatile. I've been top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting the last 5 years, and there's been guys, y'all have been giving it over me. Vince writes, because the CBA stipulates individuals' awards can escalate contract values, had Bam won it one of these years, he would have been eligible for a greater contract extension than the 3-year 166 that he had agreed to. If he had waited and done a 4-year, it would have netted over $100 million more. But you get the feeling it's less about the money and more about the recognition. He says, quote, a point guard got it over me, a center got it over me, and a power forward got it over me, referring to Marcus Smart, Rudy Gobert, and Jaren Jackson. The goalposts moved for me in certain degrees. It's me and a lot of undrafted dudes, and we still had a top 5 defense. These other guys have all NBA dudes around him, and some of it is they don't really care about us, and that's fine. I think they should pay attention more to consistency because being top 5 Defensive Player of the Year, I think that's the longest streak. I think I have the longest streak of all defensive teams, so the goalposts move for me, which he does, by the by. And, you know, that is a fair point about the guys he plays with. Now, there's been years where he plays with good defenders, to be fair, and in the year where Bam didn't win, the year I really thought that he should have won it with when Marcus Smart won it. That was a year, I mean, they had Jimmy, a little bit younger. You had PJ Tucker, good defender. But not all world guys. PJ definitely older, probably on his last good year before he got completely washed. But it is true. I mean, this guy, I think with this year where he makes first team all defense, and you look at a team like the Timberwolves who do have a lot of good defenders and all the guys that they have around Rudy Gobert, and Bam is kind of holding this thing together with duct tape over here where it's like I got, undersized point guards, I got old point guards, I got shooters out here. I'm trying to hold it together, and the Heat still finish with a decent defensive ranking, a really good defensive ranking by the end of the year. But it is interesting to note, and he has said this about the undrafted thing. I don't know if that's a shot at the teammates and the Heat roster construction, but some things have been noticeable with Bam in that, there was this clip that went viral today about guys everybody's looking forward to playing with the most. They asked Steph, they asked LeBron, they asked AD, and Bam said, who am I looking forward to playing the most? Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis, because I get a chance to play the 4, which he truly has not. I mean, there's been minutes with Myers Leonard, but, truly Myers was a stretch 5 and, did not play significant minutes all the time. So, and we're also talking 4 seasons ago. So it has been interesting. Like Bam is at this interesting point in his career, and I think that he has been the guy who sacrificed it all for the Miami Heat, and he is the good Heat soldier. And I do think that a lot of the times that can get exhausting. It's kind of like Patriot way Heat culture. If you're a star in Heat culture and you're a star player, and I think the fans kind of get on him about this, it's like, you're asking him to do all these things. And another thing with all these guys, the Smarts, the Jaren Jackson, the Rudy Goberts, but especially Gobert and Marcus Smart. Jaren Jackson is asked to hold an offensive load, but still not like, Smart and Gobert are. But still not like Bam is. Because I'd still say he's like the third option on most teams. Like, they got Desmond Bane, John Morant when he's healthy. But Bam's asked, like, I think that's why Bam makes the quip about, that's all I got to do to get respect from you guys is do 20, 10, and 5 against Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert while defending them. But I do think there's a level of Heat culture that can be exhausting because it bucks against that, and it's interesting because Bam's ultimate mentor is Udonis Haslem and hold the mantle of captain, and UD was the ultimate sacrificer. But Bam is more talented than UD is, and is got these levels to his game that Alonzo Mourning saw when he was a teenager, And we were talking about, and that was one part in our interview where he talked about, we've come a long way since being a lob threat and dribble handoffs. Like, the guy can do a lot, and I think does want the opportunity to not have to just be banging with centers all the time and, facilitate and have the ball in his hands and run the offense even more and have a bit of a chance to have the keys to the car. We've seen it. We've seen him in some big playoff series, close out playoff series. And that is going to be an interesting thing. He had an interesting comment. It was kind of a throwaway comment. But I remember in his end of season media session, which I wasn't at personally, but I did see the video of it. And he talked about, his buzzer beater against the Pistons. It was a buzzer beater 3, which he had added to his game, and that he, and that he's looking forward to more opportunities with that. And he has 2 game winners in his Heat career. One against the Nets, where I think he scored, I think it was 41. Was that the same game? Maybe I'm mixing it up. I always mix up 2 things. I always mix up the D-Wade double nickel Knicks game and the bleeding game. They're not the same game, but they were both awesome. And I don't know if I'm mixing up Bam, a Nets game where he had 41 and the buzzer beater, or if they're the same game. You'll excuse me, I'm just kind of riffing here at 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, I find the comments about I'm doing it with a lot of undrafted dudes while these guys have all NBA guys, and I do think that when the fans are frustrated, it's tough not to think that the players can be frustrated, and Jimmy and Bam can be frustrated some level with the roster construction. And maybe that's why they go draft a Khalil Ware and think, all right, this is going to help us go into this next chapter, with Khalil being at the age that he's at. And, hopefully he can produce at a level where he is on the court with Bam and show those things. But yeah, I like the fact that Bam is calling the media out. And, you mentioned a lot of people wondered about this summer and extensions. And I mentioned this after he agreed to sign his extension, not before it became official, which it did when he went to Vegas. But my initial reaction to it was, you think Bam Adebayo is going to trust the voters? Like, you think Bam Adebayo is going to leave $200 million nearly in guaranteed money? Or I know it's 166, but on top of what he already has. So it's essentially the 2 years, so a $230 million guaranteed contract. You think he's going to leave that on the table to trust voters? I don't know if there's anybody in the league who trusts NBA media voters less than Bam Adebayo. Jimmy Butler will be a guy, and it's interesting. Jimmy's at a point in his career. Jimmy doesn't care. Jimmy doesn't want all these accolades. But Jimmy's at an avenue where he is making the All-NBAs, and Jimmy is making the levers to make that big cheese, and he's further along in his career. He's at a different point in his career. Bam's not. Bam is just entering the prime of an NBA player's career, and I like the fact that he is pointing this out to everybody. So good for Bam.